Hello and welcome back to Empires of the Future. My name is Dent Nice, here with my friend Jackson. Jackson, how are you today?
I'm doing very well.
Good. Glad to hear it. You just got back from lunch?
I did. I've got Chick-fil-A in my belly.
Oh, man. What a great thing. So you guys went to the mall to eat. It's funny to me that the mall is a place that we go and eat. And especially for you, like you go to the mall, probably, right? You guys went to the mall because there was 4 of you going. There's options to pick from at the mall. And yet you choose Chick-fil-A, the most generic Christian meal that you can get anywhere.
If by generic and Christian, you mean like generally the best option, and not just at the mall, but in Evansville, Indiana.
Now, wait a minute.
At lunchtime.
Now, wait a minute.
I mean, what else do I need to say?
There are definitely some heavy hitters at the mall as far as options go.
Oh, okay.
Some of the best Chinese takeout food you'll ever eat is there in the mall. And also, as you and I both know, they have one other delicacy that you and I have recently been introduced to at the mall, the Korean hot dog.
Korean corn dog.
Korean corn or K-style hot dog is also what they're called. That's the one we had actually was called a K-style hot dog. Mm-hmm. They have those at the mall, right? At one of the places.
They do, yeah.
You didn't get that? You know it's good?
Listen, as a guy who's not an adventurous eater, it is different, and I would go again. Not right now, I'm full, but tomorrow. I'd go tomorrow for lunch to free advertisement, Jumac here in Evansville on, what is that street?
Oh, I don't know.
It's right there right there by the Vineyard store on that street here in Evansville, close to the mall, not too far from the mall. And different.
Is that Vogel?
I think it maybe.
It may be Vogel or maybe another street.
Correct. But yeah, we both enjoyed our experience there. I kept it on the simple side. You were a little more adventurous, and both of us had a great experience, not only in terms of the food, in terms of the atmosphere, the service. I would go again.
You say you kept it on the simple side.
Yes.
But the fact that you were eating what you were eating, I think for most people they'd say, yeah, that was adventurous.
Right. So yes, a Korean corn dog, even at the most basic, which I think has what I did is you had cheese, a lot of cheese in the middle, like a big oversized cheese stick with a batter that is like pancake batter. It's called off on a corn dog, but it's not cornbread at all. It's more of a pancake batter. And then mine had powdered sugar. Well, no, it's more like cinnamon and sugar on it, and that's it, right? And yours had cornflakes.
Yeah, mine was basically the same as yours, and then it had cornflakes. Of course, funny situation. I completely misunderstood what the menu was telling me, where it said like, okay, K-style hot dogs, and the options were hot dog or cheese, and I was just thinking, okay, the hot dog one is probably a plain hot dog, whereas the cheese one is a hot dog with cheese on it as well.
Interesting, okay.
And then they batter and fry that. No. If you order the K-style hot dog cheese, there is no hot dog. It's just cheese inside the batter with cinnamon sugar on top. And yeah, I got the cornflakes. It had like an extra crunch. Oh, but dang, it was so good. It was surprising. It was surprising how good it was. And yeah, highly recommend. What was the name of the restaurant again?
Jumac. Jumak.
Jumak. Jumac. And they have amazing K-style hot dogs. Go try one. Tell them Jackson sent you.
There you go.
If you go in there and tell the lady, hey, there was this guy that sent me here who said he plays StarCraft, she will probably know who you're talking about.
You should definitely say that Greg Barrett, the bearded charmer, sent you. Supposedly that will legitimately get you some sort of discount. So there you go.
Greg Barrett, the bearded charmer.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like
I'm trying to attach bearded charmer to Greg. So
yeah, I feel like that could unlock a lot to this city. From my experience with Greg, you could get places just by saying, yes, the bearded charmer, Greg Barrett sent me. Yeah. So there you go. We may have just given you the Evansville cheat code. So use it wisely.
Yep. So this has been Empires of the Future, and we're done talking about today was about Korean.
We'll see you next time. Not really. It is not about Korean hot dogs as much as I could continue talking about that. We're going to talk today about something that is near and dear to your heart and my heart.
There you go.
So near and dear that this is actually our second podcast that we are going to be doing about this thing. And it is really, even in its name, you see the origins of podcasting,
Right.
Because we are going to be talking again today for the second time in our podcast history about the iPod.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the iPod is something that you and I, unlike much of society, you and I have not completely given up on.
Right.
How many iPads do you own, or iPods do you own?
Listen, this is the truth of the statement that you are saying may not even be known to you. Probably when we were last recording about this, I probably said I owned 8, which is what I think I had then. I think I have 9 now. I've picked one up. My mom had last week had one of the last generations of iPod Nano, I think is the model, and it's got a full touch screen, but it's very small. Now, of course, I brought it home, and I'm in process of, it doesn't work yet. I've charged it, and it's not holding a charge, and also the screen doesn't seem to be reading. But don't be discouraged, folks. Those models are not among the most durable, and so I think the battery swelled up when it didn't get charged for a while, and it seems to have ruined the device. So I may or may not have 9. I may still just have 8, to answer your question.
You have 8 and the corpse of one.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Sad.
Well,
but that is being the others are being revived. That's the whole title of our podcast here.
That's right. It is. So this all stems from something that you sent me a while back, and you really sent it to me just saying, "Hey, look at this, making a comeback." And the article, what was the name of the website?
So this is from the Associated Press, so apnews.com. It says, one tech tip, a new generation is reviving the iPod for distraction-free listening. And the author is Kelvin Chan. This was released April 9th of 2026. So that's the title. And so what we get to talk about here is why is the iPod coming back? And is there a place in the market for devices that can do certain things that phones can do, but aren't trying to give you a whole bunch of notifications, aren't trying to distract you with a lot of different ways, and for our purposes in particular, that you can let your children use on a measured basis, rather than giving them a phone.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. It's interesting to me to think about the fact that what kind of has happened. You said it can do some of the things that phones can do. Well, it can do some of the things that phones now can do.
Right.
Which really we can point to and say what seems like happened was that as phones began to develop and they began to become more of a computer in your pocket, what really happened was phone developers said, look at all these other devices that we are also carrying to do these things. What if we could put it all in one place, including the phone? So sort of a combining of all these things, music, camera, telephone, obviously, even laptop computer, all of those things meshed into one phone.
Yeah, and so as a result, like the various utilities that can be added through the App Store and various other means mean that every person's phone is a little bit different in terms of the utilities that it has, obviously, but we just, it's phone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but what we all have is these multi-use devices in our pockets, right?
Yeah, it almost seems to me, this is a sort of a side note, but it almost seems to me like we should come up with something other than a phone to call these, because we use it for not only far more than a phone, we probably use it as an actual phone less than we use it for 1,000 other things, like a GPS or a camera or whatever. But nevertheless...
My robo-assistant, that'll catch on.
Yeah, no, I don't like that at all. But what's happening is you're acknowledging, and as was now acknowledged in the article, people are realizing that, okay, this phone, this device that we're using for all these things, one of the things that people like to use it for, and I'm included in that, I do this as well, is to listen to music to.
Yep.
Well, if you're pulling out your phone to do anything, including listen to music, one of the things that you notice is instantly you can become distracted from what you're doing, pulling up music, or even while you're listening to music, what else can happen? Right. You can get notifications that ding in. You can have someone call you. The music stops.
Yep.
All of these different things that really, in a sense, they distract from music listening in its pure form.
Yep.
Right. So there is a growing number of people that are seeing this and trying to combat against what phones have become as far as how distracting they are, but still want to enjoy music. Mm-hmm. The answer for a lot of people is all of a sudden going back to the iPod,
right?
Going back to a time and a piece of machinery that can provide you a whole bunch of music, hundreds even of gigabytes of music, all at your fingertips, and yet without all of the negative or distracting elements of a phone.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really cool development. I think it's interesting, if nothing else, that we are seeing in this trend kind of a stepping backwards in a stepping backwards in technology and the use of technology to a lesser form of technology because of interesting and somewhat compelling reasons, I think.
Oh, for certain. Here's a way to conceive this that I think is really useful. So I was born in 1980. That means I came of age in 1990 and in 1990s, let me say. And back then, it was the age of individual tech devices that you kind of had to carry a bag around if you wanted to have them. So I think of days when I was on the cross-country team and what would I take with me to a cross-country meet. Well, when you compare these sort of things, and specifically when you say, well, you didn't take an iPod. No, I did not. I took at first a tape player when I started high school, and then I took a CD player as time went on. And yes, with, you can't take a whole bunch of tapes or CDs because it takes up a fair amount of room. And then these dedicated devices that were all over the place in the 90s, that back then I remember my dad had a phone that was a big old pack that was in his truck, and he was the first person I ever saw who had a phone in his vehicle. And so I didn't have one of those, but there were plenty of devices back then that were bought at places like Circuit City or Best Buy, which still exists. And all of these tech devices took a fair amount of space. And what we kind of bought into, it seems, and then what was sold to us also, I mean, the dream that was associated with the with the iPhone was one device that could do all of these things that you want. One of the things that has changed that I think should be at the front of our conversation here since then is we've realized our attention is one of the most important resources we have, and we have now let many different companies and applications have our attention, have control of our attention, and that's turned out to be really bad for us. Mm-hmm. And you are sort of, I think, living and referencing it might not be great for my music listening if I don't know where you were living in your headspace there, but it felt like you were more thinking about while I'm at work. We've also discovered that it's not very good for your headspace to just constantly have to have your phone with you while you're trying to rest and relax.
Yeah.
And that is not something we've all done a very good job of thinking through. My attention, where is my attention? What is trying to capture my attention, and how good am I at saying, no, you can't have my attention for this period of time? Mm-hmm. For this period of time, I'm going to direct my attention to this, and whether this is my child or whether it's the task of writing, something that I need to write, or to, developing a project or working on a project we have all recognized our attention is very valuable. And not only have we recognized that, unfortunately, many companies have recognized that, and we've given them and they've given us ways to get at our attention.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, the easiest way to talk about the biggest change that we are pointing to when we talk about, okay, why is an iPod useful? And is it that the utility is so much greater than a phone of any kind or a personal computing device of any kind? And the answer is
no. Right. It's not. It can do far less than a phone can do.
And there's value in that.
Yeah, that's right. That's kind of what we're saying, is that we're realizing all of a sudden there is value in something that can't do everything, that is limited in what it can do. And just hearing you talk, it was making me think about, like, when you said you used to have you didn't call it a Walkman, but you said a cassette player,
sure.
Walkman, like a personal cassette player, and then a Discman,
right.
a personal CD player, and you had to take with you, like, just whatever albums either you had recently acquired or you really liked that you enjoyed listening to. Mm-hmm. I think about even on The Office. So there was an episode of The Office. It was an early episode, like season 2, where Jim and Pam, they're not together yet. They're just friends, quote unquote. And they're walking out one day after work, and Jim was putting his headphones in, and they're corded, and they're connected to an iPod. And Pam said, "Oh, did you get new music?" And he was like, "Yeah." And she put her hand out for the headphone. He gave her the other earbud and put it in. And they both enjoyed listening to the new music that he had just gotten.
Yeah.
Even that, which is not that long ago,
right?
Like that era, is so much different than, like,
right,
our relationship to music now. Mm-hmm. Whereas that was even a time when music was far more accessible than it had ever been before that.
Right.
But before that, in order to get music, listen to music, you either had to, we've talked about this before, but you either had to listen to what was on the radio, which you had no control over. It was going to be picked for you. And, you know, it was a good way to get maybe acquainted with new songs and stuff. But also, you were going to hear what was the popular songs by the popular artists, you know, stuff like that. Other than that, if you wanted to get new music, you had to go buy cassettes or then CDs. And before that, records. You had to go and buy those things. And you developed a kind of relationship with the music that you had that's very different than today.
Right.
I can think of albums and still have them. I've kept all my CDs. I've never gotten rid of a CD.
Right, as have I, which makes us both pretty unique, even from that viewpoint, yeah.
Yep, and both very frustrating to our wives.
Correct, yes.
That's also true. But I've got this huge thing of CDs. But I can flip through that CDs, and like, as I'm flipping through, I'm seeing these albums, and I can think of like what phase of life I was in whenever I got that album, how excited I was about that album. I can remember times in which I listened to those, like on trips, on vacations, things like that, like listening to this album over and over again. The way I would get like an album, and if it was one I really liked and it was excited about, an artist I liked, man, I would have that whole album memorized. That has not been the case for me since it's been a long time that I've had a relationship with an album like that. By and large, like, I still enjoy music and listen to music, but more than anything, my listening to music is just, it's weird to say, but it's almost like more unhealthy consumeristic in the relationship, in that I will listen to music if it doesn't immediately resonate or, you know, hit a certain vibe I'm looking for, on to the next one. A lot of times I'm listening to music that, if I'm listening on my phone, the music that Spotify is suggesting to me, like, hey, based on your listening, maybe you'll like this, you know, and stuff like that. But more than anything, the listening that I do is also just like hits and top songs. I can remember albums that I had listening to growing up that, like, there was songs on there I didn't care about.
Right.
But like, I either had to listen to it, or did anyway, or you had to skip those songs. So
well, and even, you know, and since I'm obviously a little older than you, when you had to fast forward on a tape, one, it took longer, and two, you might miss the beginning of your song and then have to rewind, and it was just so the experience of listening to a whole album, mostly because it's tedious to not listen to the whole album, and also you came to understand and you came to relate to an album as an experience, more like a novel than a 3-minute kind of intersection. And I still not only do I relate to music that way, I still want to relate to music that way, and I generally still do, because though you and I have access pretty much to the same tools. You're a Spotify subscriber right now, right?
Yep.
And I have a subscription through the church. And what I do then is either I'm telling it what songs on a song-by-song basis, or it's not, the algorithm doesn't necessarily seem to want you to do this, but you can take the time to go into it and say, no, this album, play this album for me. It is set up to where it tends to move you around, and it seems to think what you want is, I'll take you to a song that's kind of like this by a different person, and I don't want it to do that.
You don't know me, Spotify.
Right, yeah. And that's a part of this article, that one of the reasons people are getting away, they don't want their musical experience curated by an algorithm. And literally one of the things that people like about iPods, and have liked about iPods since the mid-2000s, was that you make playlists or you just let an album play, I was never a playlist guy. I don't know why.
Really?
I can't explain. Yeah, I never wanted to take the time to curate a playlist and to just, like, to me, I'm happy enough. My moods, or what I kind of like chose to listen to, was more just like, no, I want to listen to this whole album. I thought, and I still do think very much of, like, it's so interesting to me, and so a part of how I relate to music, to think this artist chose this song to be the first song. And that's the doorway into this and this. And I love I love to then sort of live in this kind of, wow, so they picked this song to follow that. And the album itself, it's like the next level to me of every song is an experience, but an album is like a super experience of highs and lows and different statements about things. And yes, depending on the artist, my R&B albums are not some sort of varied experience. Most of them are about love but still, that means there's this whole kind of experience to it. And I can tell you things like Brian McKnight albums almost invariably end with some sort of vaguely spiritual or more church-like song, but then the first 11 tracks were love songs.
Yeah. And
that's just a thing about him. But look, that is so fascinating and engaging to me, and that's what I want out of music is it came through a person. And obviously, if people have listened to others of our podcast, the God element of this is present to me because I'm learning, I'm hearing music, I'm being given an experience and getting to creatively experience someone else's ability and their heart and all of this. But also, it has this message element of what kind of things do they think are important to say here and here and here. And that's one of the most amazing things to me about music is that we all have so much that we want to communicate. Music allows you to communicate in such a more powerful, measured fashion. And one of the amazing things about, the most talented musicians is somebody like Bach, just through music, can communicate things all at once because of the nature of music, because of the fact that you're giving a point and a counterpoint, because you are giving notes that are in chords. And then this is all what musicians can do. And it just makes me go, well, I want to experience what this musician has to say in as full a fashion as I can. And the medium that I grew up with was this album based. And even you're saying I'm dissatisfied with some sort of single based musical ecosystem where it's just I get one song by this person, then you're going to take me to some other song by some other person. And that no matter how good the algorithm gets of trying to sort of like anticipate what you want, but we all know it's anticipating what you want, but it's also going, I would like to take you somewhere. And and what it has available, the artists that are on Spotify are artists that have agreed to be on Spotify, and there are plenty who haven't, and the artists are not necessarily being equally compensated. None of us thinks that this is necessarily fair to the artists. And so that element of it, I think, is present even in what I'm saying. So I went through a lot there, but what you have here is we live in a moment where a lot of people are deciding, this is in a lot of ways, convenience has been put front and center, but convenience is not the only answer that I'm looking for out of this.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. It's one of the things about what you said that's interesting is the way you consider the construction of the album, the order of the songs, what the songs are saying in that order. You consider that to be a part of the creative process as well, not just each individual song and the lyrics and design of the song, which I think is a good point. And it's not only somewhat lost today, but somewhat irrelevant to a certain degree for the way most people listen via streaming. And that's an interesting point. A lot of the albums I grew up listening to literally would actually intentionally construct the song orders in a way to either kind of tell a story. Yep. Sometimes they would even have transitions from one song to the next. Right. That wouldn't make sense. Right. If you separate the songs or if you shuffle them. So that's interesting. Now I was a playlist guy. I always have been. Okay. I'm a mixtape guy. Yeah. Love it. But that was one of the things I really liked about the iPod and was unique about it was that I almost took pride in the playlist that I created. Yeah. You know, the effort I put into, all of this music that I was acquainted with. It was my music, and I'm taking what is the best of my music, or not always the best, but the best of different genres or moods. I would take it upon myself to whenever I was I don't know, middle school ish, early high school, I would take it upon myself to make a playlist that we could listen to at Christmas. Cool. Yeah. Here's my Christmas playlist, just because I enjoyed doing that. And so yeah, I did like the playlist options. Made a lot of different playlists. Was constantly making on the go playlists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you would do that.
Yep.
And that was fun. Whenever I figured out how to do that, but I also, one thing that was really fun to me. Well, I'll tell you this too. Like I was not exactly the same page as you growing up as far as, like I listened to whole albums. I did, like, especially the albums I bought.
Mm-hmm.
But then when iTunes came along, or when, more specifically, when I sort of figured out how to use iTunes and that you could get an iTunes gift card and buy music, I didn't buy a ton of like whole albums. Usually I was buying individual songs. I bought way more individual songs than I did whole albums.
Yeah.
The only whole albums I bought were artists that I already was like, okay, I'm committed to this artist. I really like their stuff. I'm going to buy it when it comes out.
Yeah.
But I definitely bought a lot of individual songs. Yeah. So I was paying, 99 cents, $1.29 per song. I would also buy music videos and stuff. But definitely there's been a progression of our experience and our relationship with music that has changed over the different forms of the different mediums of music. And it's interesting to see now we're like taking some steps back to earlier forms. And I think it could be a good thing, especially if I just try and think through what are the pros.
Yeah.
Well, one of the pros is obviously for anyone who's like, and I know a lot of people personally that are saying my attention span is not what it used to be.
Yes.
I am so easily distracted. I find it very hard to focus on a task. If I'm hearing that from someone and them saying, I'm ready to try all kinds of things to sort of undo this problem. Well, an easy and I think very practical, or maybe some people wouldn't call it practical, but I think a very understandable next step would be this one. Like try and find ways to get away from this central device of a smartphone. Find ways to get yourself away from it so as not to be distracted by it the way it wants me to be, right? And so it's a great way to do that. It's a great way to avoid the distraction of a smartphone. I would also say it's cost effective, meaning you don't have to have a subscription fee to use your iPod, and there's no ads either.
Yep.
That you have to worry about. So Spotify Premium is like $12.99 a month, assuming it's not bundled with other things. I mean, that's over the course of a year, like you're spending quite a bit of money on this streaming service. And so if you're looking for something cost effective, it also is cost effective. The one thing I will say about that, immediately when I was reading this article, I was like, okay, he made the point that like the secondary market for iPods it's there because they sold so many of them. It's there. And I thought, and I bet you can get an iPod for pretty cheap too. Do you know how much? I'm just test you. Maybe you've already looked it up. I don't know. How much do you think an iPod Classic, like the video iPod, 5th, 6th, 7th generation, how much do you think they go for on eBay? Well, either the 30, 80, 120.
Let's just go with the mid-level then.
Go with 80.
80, I would guess that 5th or 6th generation iPod Classic, you're talking with the wheel.
Yep.
That's going to be probably $60 now.
You'd be wrong.
How much is it?
It's like $150.
Really?
Yep.
Well, good. I have one. I have one that's not working, but I have one. I have a 120 gigabyte iPod Classic that's still working, and I use.
Did you realize how much of an investment you were making when you were buying up those iPods?
No. I didn't. And I didn't necessarily think that. Well, I didn't think it would be, but I also didn't think that we would get so quickly towards this situation where a lot of people have just jumped on board with these streaming services, which I think the cons of are really, really clear. But we'll get to those in a minute.
Yeah.
So wow, $150 for you looked that model up.
And
good.
So if you go on eBay right now and look, and some are more than that.
Right.
But if you go on eBay right now and you look up these classic iPods.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, okay, how about the classic iPod that I first bought, which is the 30 gig video iPod Classic. I think that's the 5th generation, but it might have been 4th or 3rd. I don't know. But the one just like mine, the 30 gig one, the cheapest one I found and I'm going by what has sold, not what they're selling for. Yeah. Like what has sold. The cheapest one I saw was $80.
Yeah.
And Yeah, working, but it didn't come with a charging port or any accessories.
Charging cable?
Yeah,
Really?
the charging cable is what I meant to say. It didn't come with a charging cable or accessories. Some of them
no headphones.
No headphones.
Interesting.
Yep, it's just the iPod.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, that was a little bit surprising to me. So as much as I'm saying they're cost effective, you could probably find them cheaper if you keep your eye out. If you go to yard sales, if you check.
I don't see them that
Facebook
often at yard
Marketplace.
sales. I've
gotten a couple of yard sales.
Yeah, I mean, maybe once a year, I guess I'll see one that looks decent at a yard sale. I will say though, I think that
isn't that surprising though?
it is. It is. This has gotten away from any sort of knowledge I had from where it was going, and apparently, I'm never able to keep up too much with really big trends like this because I try not to be trendy in this regard in terms of tech, because basically I don't like to spend money on stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so you can end up, if you try to be trendy with this, you can spend money on something that later you may not like.
Yeah.
Buy the newest iPhone. It's like, this is $1,000. I'm not doing it, So one thing about this that we should say is that while iPods have been the most known MP3 player, they've been synonymous with the name of MP3 player.
Yeah.
There are many MP3 players still on the market. We bought, what is it? Verdinsky or something, a brand that just off of Amazon at Christmas because our son wanted one. We got it for him, and it's been just fine for him. And so there are other kinds of MP3 players. There are companies that are making them and selling them.
That's a good thing to note. I'm glad you're saying that. We're talking iPod here because that's sort of the direction of the article.
Yep.
And you and I both have iPods, and, and we're
right,
fans. We think it's a good product and stuff. But if you hear that price tag and you're like, well, forget that, just keep using my phone.
Yeah, you have
there
options.
are cheaper options.
Right.
Which
And the devices are very reliable. With Apple, obviously what that does for the iPod is Apple, their hold on the market has been driven by the commitment to quality that the company has had. And in some ways, quality and simplicity are the things that Apple has really pushed. Yeah. And so the iPods have been well designed. They've been durable. One thing I can tell you is that none of us knows that I mean, almost nobody that I talk to knows a whole lot about this is this kind of lithium-ion battery. This is this kind of lithium, like the quality of batteries in a lot of devices that we've been using for, say, the last 20, 25 years has varied. And we've all, at this point, had devices that the battery goes bad in like a year and had devices that somehow the battery is lasting 25 years. And that's another thing the iPods have going for them is they have high-quality components, including the battery. And then that means these batteries are still, all the batteries in the iPods that I have maintained still hold up. Mm-hmm. Now, if an iPod has sat for years uncharged, I've already mentioned that in the story that I told, that's very bad for any lithium-ion battery to not be charged. It's not that material is not made to just sit dormant like that. Yeah. And so even buying one at a yard sale is not a good proposition because it has likely sat so long. Yes. And that's just a caution that everybody should hold about it.
Yes. I will say two things about that. One is the next thing I was going to say is that they are very durable. Now, I would say, except for the iPod Touch, I think the worst thing the iPod Touch is my least favorite of the iPods because it does cross over into, this is something different now. Mm-hmm. It's more in the realm of it's a computer that does various things. And then
it has the App Store available, yeah.
Exactly. It came out after the iPhone. The iPhone came out and all of a sudden I was like, well, everyone really likes this. Yeah. Let's make one for the kids, basically, is kind of what they did. But and then they added in the screen on the Nano. They changed the Nano to where it has a screen. It had a screen, touch screen. They basically turned it into a smaller iPod Touch. Right. Didn't like that. I didn't really care for that. It's adding, like you said, it's getting away from the simplicity and the durability. But those things, those specific models aside, like the iPod Classics, the Nanos, the Shuffles, generally extremely durable. And what a lot of people have discovered, and I have as well, not that hard to work on yourself. Mm-hmm. So I have replaced 2 different batteries now in the classic iPod. Mm-hmm. I've replaced 2, and it was surprisingly easy. You can go online and find YouTube videos on how to do it, and it took me all of maybe 10 minutes to change the battery on an iPod Classic. Yeah. It really is not that hard at all. And you and I have talked a little bit about this. There are websites out there that sell like aftermarket components, you can actually swap out a lot of the components on your iPod.
Yeah.
Even what's the hard drive? It's like a movable. What is it? So what kind of hard drive does the iPod have? You can like hear it clicking.
Oh, you're talking about
you know,
it's not solid state, so it has moving parts.
It has moving parts, right? You can actually replace that with a solid state hard drive now, and it's relatively easy to do. And like I said, all kinds of YouTube videos and stuff out there. If you're at all capable, handy, doing anything like that, you can actually do this yourself. So that speaks to both. I agree with you about the durability. Yes, the battery is the most likely thing to go bad, but I would even encourage people, if you find one and like it won't turn on, don't let that scare you away. If you can get it for next to nothing, go ahead and buy it. And the batteries are not that expensive. For $20, you could have yourself a very nice working iPod. So.
Yeah, and I'll add another pro that we've sort of mentioned, but it mentions in the article that specifically using an iPod for a simple music listening experience means you won't simultaneously be doom scrolling on your phone through the various social media apps that have pulled you in, whether that's Facebook, Instagram. And for myself, I don't know if I've had Twitter on my phone before, but I don't have a single social media app on my phone because I don't want that. I don't want push notifications. I don't want I don't want doom scrolling to be that readily available because there's something in us that is vulnerable to, well, that wasn't that interesting, but if I just keep scrolling up, the next thing is interesting. Well, that was a little more interesting. Maybe if I keep scrolling up, there'll be something even more interesting. And this effect that it has on us, and in part because of the platform, in part because it represents our relationship with people all around. And depending on how populated your individual social media device is, we are just not made to have these distant connections with people that we then seem to just go like, yeah, I haven't seen that person in 15 years. Maybe if I keep scrolling, it'll tell me more about what they've been into, and I click, and all of this that everybody knows what we're talking about here. Yep. Getting away from that vague relational connection element and not letting it just be so, not letting it have its claws in you is a big deal. And so I think I don't have any other pros that a lot of the things we've pointed to have been pros.
That's right. Well, I think it's worth it. If you are realizing that like your focus, your productivity is waning, then I think you should be very open to hearing somewhat strange, silly proposals on how to help combat that. Even something like this. It might seem silly, but if it's going to help you combat that, I think it's worth it. And
Absolutely.
I think we ought to fight for our attention, our ability to focus, our ability to be productive. And so I say yes to this. Plus, I'm vindicated. My argument for hard copies, my argument for iPods, and the reason I have kept all of mine, like you, I've got several. I don't have 9, but I've got several. Yeah. I'm vindicated in it, so that also makes me pretty happy.
I mean, one thing to compare this to, and we've referenced, that there are a variety of devices. One that I hear people mention to me, that I think we've even mentioned on the podcast before. For a lot of us, and I'm one of these people right now, for a lot of us, our phone has replaced our alarm clock. And I say replaced, my alarm clock is right there.
It sits on your
alarm clock. It's right there. And I just, for whatever convenience, like we talked about, it's just dictated this, but I could push the button on my alarm clock tonight and my phone could be completely in another room. And you know what? If I'm just pushed a little bit, then I will do that because I know the phone can be a problem at night. Yeah. Texts and calls and, that's another device that we may not, each of us, be wise to let the phone replace, and that's our alarm clock. And really, I think the point of our whole podcast here today is if you have an opportunity, slow down and think about the devices that you're using. Mm-hmm. And if you could make some shifts that would give you better rest, better attention, to help you to have calmer moments, to help you be focused on the people around you more, to give them more of yourself rather than letting your attention and yourself be diverted in a lot of different ways. And so there's another one there. That's just another example of it. Because the cons in regard to this are, yes, there is a cost associated with if you don't have an iPod right now and you used to and you want to get one, yeah, there's a certain cost. And it is frankly more than I thought it would be, like you're saying. Yeah. However, the value, like the cons of it, I can't think of a whole lot more when there's going to be for you. I mean, and this is a legit problem. I have a lot of different devices at this point that I am thinking, oh, that battery, I need to keep up that battery. And in parts because I own a lot of iPods, old tech. And not only that, I mean, and just, what is he talking about? Well, old video games, if they're able to save, they have batteries in them.
Yeah.
And those things can go bad too. And so I have a lot of old video games and I have to think periodically, if I put in a cartridge and it doesn't save anymore, well, that means that battery is bad. And if you leave a bad battery in something, it will corrode. It will, it could split and ruin it. And you don't want that. Yeah. And so that is a negative. In every device you have to keep charged. Otherwise, it's not useful to you. And so that's just a thing that's true, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I didn't know we had a point to this podcast. I just wanted to talk about the iPod. You know, we talked in our last
a good fit, you and I.
That's right, we're a good fit. In our last episode on the iPod, I think we titled it "The Death of the iPod."
Right.
Here we are, and
let me ask you this question.
He's alive.
Right. Let me ask you this question: what do you think are the chances, based on what you've read and what we've talked about, that Apple themselves would bring back and sell the iPod again?
I don't think we'll ever see the iPod Classic come back. I think maybe the touch. Yeah. They said in the article, they still actually service the iPod Touch.
Interesting.
They'll still fix them.
Okay.
Only the touch ones though. And the Nanos that have the touch screen.
Oh, interesting.
The newest Nanos.
Yeah.
Now the iPod Classics though, they won't do any work on those.
Okay.
You're done. They're not supporting them at all.
And I will say that while aftermarket sort of places might work on them, I have personally taken an iPod to like one of the local stores that repairs phones.
Yep.
And been turned away. They said, not
really?
worth my time. Don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's just, I think, fairly individual to that store because what they're doing is they're just going, honestly, I can make more money by just working on people's phones. Every day, people drop $800 phones and they bring them to me, and they will pay me $200 to fix their $800 phone. Meanwhile, your device there, I would have to spend 2 hours on it, and I'm not going to, the charge, like, he would know, I'm not going to get you to pay me $200 to work on your, and it's true. And so he didn't even get to that.
Yeah.
I just know what he's thinking. Cause honestly, I was surprised that I was turned away.
That is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
There are places that will work on them. I think actually some online stores or online like repair shops that you can send it to and they'll fix it. But let me say this, listen, don't be afraid. Open that bad boy up, try and figure out what's wrong with it. Like I said, if it's not turning on, it's probably the battery.
Yeah.
Replace the battery. They're not that expensive. $10, $20. You can buy a battery for it. And then if it still won't turn on, like do some research. Figure it out. Tinker with it. They are surprisingly easy to tinker on. And I think you'll realize.
I warn you all, he's right. On the one hand, Denton's right. On the other hand, as a person who is sort of mid-level on working on electronics, I'm going to tell you, Denton is above mid-level at working on most things. And a part of what is happening as we're listening to this is it has come upon me the realization that I think Denton could fix one or two of my iPods for me because I have not bought I would buy a kit. If anybody's going to do this, I would buy a kit that you have what is it called? The little plastic spong, or it's got some funny name that just pops it open.
Yep.
Right.
Now, I will say that I did buy, when I first decided I was going to do some work on mine, I bought a kit that comes with like 5 or 6 different tools designed to safely and helpfully pry it open and stuff like that. I do agree with that.
Yeah, I would not just use a screwdriver on it.
Your flathead screwdriver, your buck pocket knife. Right. You probably don't use that. But
electronics are much more. You can't be as rough with electronics as you can with many other do-it-yourself types of. Yeah.
But that same realization hit me. I'm like, dang, you got to if you've got an iPod that's not working, bring it to me. I'm talking to you, Jackson. Good. Not everyone listening. Although everyone listening, if you've got an iPod that's not working, I might be able to help you out. I'm a pretty friendly guy. So, But I don't think my email is anywhere for them to even like email me if they want.
So
Okay, so good luck finding me.
you're clear.
No, but hey, this has been a fun conversation. This
agree.
for you and me was a little bit of a fun one, kind of a vanity project, if you will, where you could come and brag about how many iPods you have.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
That was the purpose of this.
Yeah, that was the purpose of this iPod. Yeah. So, but this has been enjoyable, and hopefully it was helpful. Legitimately, I do think. I just know for myself. You and I have talked about this. I know how hard it is, how easy it is to be distracted by things.
Yes.
Finding ways to avoid that. I am in favor of that, and I know a lot of people need it. So, we want to help make that happen. Encourage that to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anything else to say. How about you?
Nope.
Well, then this has been Empires of the Future.
And we'll see you in the future.